In explaining the reason for peremptory challenges, Chief Justice Warren Burger quoted an expert on juries as saying, "Common human experience, common sense, psychosociological studies, and public opinion polls tell us that it is likely that certain classes of people statistically have predispositions that would make them inappropriate jurors for particular kinds of cases." The peremptory challenge is a system that allows the covert expression of what we dare not say, but know is true more often than not. The problem from a legal perspective is that this is the very definition of stereotyping, and it allows racial bias to infect the system. An African American named James Batson was on trial for burglary in the state of Kentucky. Initially, there only were 4 African Americans in the jury pool, and the prosecutors used their peremptory challenges to strike all 4 of them. The resulting jury was all white, and it returned a guilty verdict. Batson appealed his conviction to the Supreme Court, claiming that it was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. In a 7-2 decision, the court agreed with him that it was. In making this decision, the court emphasized that no defendant was entitled to any particular racial makeup of their jury. It said that no defendant has a right to a jury composed in whole or in part of persons of his own race. However, the court went on to say that the defendant does have the right to be tried by a jury whose members are selected pursuant to non-discriminatory criteria. So the procedure used must be racially neutral, but no particular outcome is guaranteed. The court noted that in Strotter v. West Virginia, it struck down a law that prevented non-whites from serving on juries, but that race-based peremptory challenges allowed states to accomplish the same end. In a concurring opinion, Justice Thurgood Marshall wrote, "A little over a century ago, this court invalidated a state statute providing that black citizens could not serve as jurors. Although the means used to exclude blacks have changed, the same pernicious consequence has continued. Misuse of the peremptory challenge to exclude black jurors has become both common and flagrant. For example, an instruction book used by the prosecutor's office in Dallas County, Texas, explicitly advised prosecutors that they conduct jury selection so as to eliminate any member of a minority group." The court said that the use of race-based peremptory challenges causes 3 different harms: to the person on trial, to the excluded juror, and to the justice system itself. The defendant is harmed because they are robbed of their constitutional right to a jury composed of his neighbors, fellows, associates, persons having the same legal status in society as that which he holds. The court said that the potential juror is also harmed because whether or not a juror can be unbiased should be decided on a case-by-case basis. It said, "Competence to serve as a juror ultimately depends on an assessment of individual qualifications and ability impartially to consider evidence presented at a trial. A person's race simply is unrelated to his fitness as a juror." The Equal Protection Clause forbids the prosecutor to challenge potential jurors solely on account of their race, or on the assumption that black jurors as a group will be unable impartially to consider the state's case against a black defendant. The court also said that the entire community is harmed because selection procedures that purposefully exclude black persons from juries undermine public confidence in the fairness of our system of justice. So the use of race-based peremptory challenges by the prosecution violates the Equal Protection Clause. But this decision created a fundamental problem. The very definition of a peremptory challenge is one for which the attorney does not have to supply a reason for the challenge. For an attorney to prove that they are not using their challenges based on race, requires them to provide an explanation for their challenge, which means it's no longer a peremptory challenge at all. So the court set up a procedure. If a defense attorney thinks that a prosecutor is using their peremptory challenges on the basis of race, they can try to prove it to the judge. For example, a pattern of strikes against black jurors might give rise to an inference of discrimination. Similarly, the prosecutor's questions and statement may support or refute an inference of discriminatory purpose. If the judge agrees that it seems likely that the prosecutor is using their challenges based on race, the judge will then ask the prosecutor to explain themselves. They must then offer an explanation, although the court emphasized that the prosecutor's explanation need not rise to the level justifying exercise of a challenge for cause. In other words, the prosecutor's reason doesn't have to be as good as it would be for a challenge for cause, but it must be based on something other than race. Although the Supreme Court has gotten more conservative since the Batson ruling, it has upheld it as recently as 2019. Curtis Flowers was accused of killing 4 people in Mississippi. For various reasons, he was put on trial 6 times for these murders. During those 6 trials, the prosecutors used their peremptories to exclude 41 out of 42 black prospective jurors. The prosecutor also engaged in dramatically disparate questioning of black and white prospective jurors, and struck a black juror while not striking a similar white juror. The court found this to be unconstitutional by an 8-to-1 vote, with only Clarence Thomas in dissent, who called for Batson to be overturned. However, Batson was a decision that only applied to prosecutors in criminal cases. It left several questions unanswered. One was whether defense attorneys were also prohibited from using race-based peremptory challenges. The court ruled that they were. In another case, the court ruled that the Batson decision applied in civil cases as well as criminal cases. What about gender? In the 1990s, the state of Alabama went to court to prove that a man was the father of a child, in order to force him to pay child support. When the case went to trial, there were 10 men and 23 women in the jury pool. Alabama used all of its peremptories to remove men from the pool, and the resulting jury was composed entirely of women. After they returned a verdict that he was the father, the man appealed to the Supreme Court. It agreed with him and extended the Batson decision, so that peremptory challenges cannot be used solely on the basis of gender either.